Members, please come to the chambers.
Alquist, Anderson, Berryhill, Blakesley, Calderon, Canella, Corbett, Correa, De Leon, DeSaulnier, Dutton, Emerson, Evans, Fuller, Gaines, Hancock, Harmon, Hernandez, Huff, Kehoe, Lamaffa, Leno, Ted Lieu, Carol Lieu, Lowenthal, Negrete McLeod, Padilla, Pavley, Price, Rubio, Runner, Smidian, Steinberg, Strickland, Vargas, Walters, Wolk, Wright, Weiland, Yee. Madam President, a quorum is present.
Members, a quorum is present. Will the members and our guests beyond the rail and in the gallery please rise? We will be led in prayer this morning by our chaplain, Rabbi Mona Alfie, after which please remain standing and will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Senator Runner. Good morning.
Good morning. William Shakespeare, a man who understood the power of words, wrote, "My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go." Words in and of themselves have no inherent power. Whether in prayer or in conversation, if our words lack truth or ring hollow, they do not reach the heavens. Our words are only as meaningful as the thoughts they reflect. Both the spoken and the written word are two of the most powerful gifts that humankind possess. The communicated word can be used to build up or tear down society, to spread enlightenment, or to enforce darkness. May the Holy One of Blessing inspire us to raise our voices in the service of others and to express our heart's most noble endeavors. May this be God's will. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a good weekend, Mona. Bye-bye. Members, we're at privileges of the floor. Introductions, announcements. Privileges of the floor, members. Privileges of the floor. Privileges of the floor. Seeing none, we will move on to messages from the governor. They'll be deemed read. Messages from the assembly will be deemed read. Reports of committees will be deemed read. And we are at motions and resolutions, members. Members, without objection, the following resolutions will be withdrawn from committee and placed on today's special consent calendar. That's ACR 8 and ACR 11. Without objection? Thank you. Senator Steinberg, you have a resolution. Do you want to present it now?
I don't see any.
Not yet. Members, then we're going to move on and give people a little more time to get to the chambers. Introduction and first reading of bills. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 17 by Senator LaMalfa relative to Prostate Cancer Awareness Month.
And members, we have consideration of the daily file.
Let's recess the regular and go into first.
Alrighty. Before we take up special consent, members, we're going to recess the regular session and go into the first extraordinary session. At this time, the regular session will stand in recess, and the first extraordinary session will be convened. The prayer and the pledge will be deemed complete. We'll take up items in extraordinary session, item 1 and item 2. Senator Steinberg. Senator, yes, I hate to keep hounding you, but now you have to present a bill, SB 1X. Members, can you take your seats, please, and let's commence with some business. Please take a seat. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 1 by Senator Steinberg, an act relating to partnership academies.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It's my first bill of the year in this extraordinary session. We combined, I think, the two most important themes beyond the budget that ought to define our two-year legislative session, and that is linking education and the economy, linking education and jobs, especially for young people who are hoping and expecting that when they graduate from high school, when they graduate from college, when they graduate from a training program, that they'll have the opportunity to actually obtain and achieve a high-wage job. This bill taps a special fund administered by the California Energy Commission for $8 million, a modest sum, annually over 5 years to fund the startup of an estimated 90 new California Partnership Academies in the growing sector of technology and renewable energy. The history of these partnership academies throughout California have been very, very positive. They give young people the applied learning, the applied academics that makes education more relevant for them, that reduces the propensity for dropping out, and most importantly, that educates and begins preparing young people for the new economy. We use the so-called ERPA fund. It's a small surcharge, an average of 18 cents a month per customer on electricity ratepayers of privately owned utilities, to fund this economic opportunity for young people and for California. I urge and I vote.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Is there discussion, members? Any discussion? Senator LaMalfa.
You know, interestingly, in Budget Committee the other day, there was an item in there about the Operation Welcome Home program, which would help the influx of returning soldiers coming from our operations overseas. And it had been a program that had been around about a year before I got back here. And in that Budget Committee, it was seen that this was a new program, a $5 million item. And the Budget Committee, in its wisdom, decided not to support that program. And here we are with something that you could be argued that is already going on every day in the schools, green jobs, green this, green that, that our kids are getting bombarded with every day on their TV shows, inside the schools. And we're creating this right now at a time when in the Budget Committee we're making very difficult decisions. And so I can't really understand the direction of this type of legislation at this time. It may have merits. For all the respect I have for the pro tem and what he's trying to do here, I just don't understand at this time how we're doing this.
Thank you, Senator LaMalfa. Senator Huff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pro Tem, I do rise to oppose this bill. I appreciate the author fast-tracking this because it shows what can be done when there are motivations. I wish we could apply the same speed to fixing the underlying structural budget problem that we have in the state. But this bill also enacts bad tax policy. And I say tax policy because we're taking a ratepayer surcharge and we're using that to fund K-12 education. Now, I love education as much as anybody. I've been serving as education vice chair. It's the largest item we spend on our budget already, over 50%, and it's one of the few things with guarantees about how much spending goes into it. But because this is sort of a warm, fuzzy kind of thing that it's for, it's more noble than anything else. But in the partnership academies that train students for green jobs, what exactly is a green job? I mean, anything, I guess, that you can tie into this newfound thing that we're somehow going to balance our backs on in this state. Every job is going to become a green job. I would remind you that in Spain, University of Madrid found a study that for every green job they created, they killed 2.2 regular jobs. I don't think that's the kind of math we need to do in these green academies. So, although this this rate increase sunsets, it creates pressure to extend it down the road. Because how many programs do we have here that we actually let sunset? Oh, let's see, the 2-year rate tax increase. Oh, no, we're trying to extend that again, aren't we? Because once we get a means to fund something, there's no institutional desire to cut it back. It's only to grow. Ratepayer funds should be used for ratepayer benefits, not general benefits. I urge a no vote.
Senator Alquist.
I rise in strong support of this legislation. As one who actually majored in mathematics, pure mathematics, many, many years ago, I have found that in the schools, and I was a high school math teacher at one point for 2-3 years, that there's a lag time between what we consider to be innovative instruction and when that is actually implemented in the schools. And I think there's really a need for this kind of bill because I don't think in all of our schools that we are concentrating on skills for jobs for the present and for the future. And even though the economy is really terrible right now, it is stated in the energy program for this that this is a suitable use of dollars. And my last comment is that we need to have some hope and give that hope to our children, to our students, that we are going to help them to see that they get the kind of skills so that they can get good jobs.
Thank you. Any other discussion, members? Senator Blakesley.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. There's a real irony on what's occurring on the floor at this moment. We are in special session to address 2 pieces of legislation that seek to create green jobs. The irony, of course, being that to create the 33% renewable portfolio standard, we will need to undertake one of the most ambitious, far-reaching efforts to site new renewable facilities around the state of California that we've ever undertaken. The bill we're hearing today will take much of those monies that will be needed for siting and other work by the California Energy Commission to meet these large, ambitious environmental goals and redirects them to another purpose. The left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing adds, I think, to the impression that we're not serious about coordinating our efforts both to ensure that our educational and environmental goals are simultaneously achieved rather than one preying off the other. I urge a no vote.
Thank you. Members, further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Senator Steinberg, would you care to close?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the debate, members. Look, I would prefer that we dramatically expand career education and partnership academies through Prop 98. Love to do it. But as you know, over the next several weeks, we will define whether Prop 98 can afford for education to keep what it has, much less try to build upon what are proven and successful strategies. And if you're serious about job creation, if you're serious about economic development, then you need to be serious about education and workforce preparation. And that's what this bill does. Green jobs. The voters spoke pretty loudly last November in rejecting Proposition 23. They want us to build a clean energy economy, and this is an essential part of it. I'd urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alquist? Aye. Anderson? No. Berryhill? No. Blakesley? No. Calderon? Aye. Canella? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? De Leon? Aye. DeSaulnier? Aye. Dutton? No. Emerson? No. Evans? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines? No. Hancock? Aye. Herman? No. Hernandez? Aye. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. LaMalfa? No. Leno? Aye. Ted Lieu? Aye. Carol Lieu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Rubio? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Vargas? Aye. Walters? No. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Correa, aye. Madam President, ayes 25, noes 15.
The ayes are 25. The item passes. Members, we're going on to file item 2 in special session. Senator Simitian, SB 2. The Secretary will read.
Senate Bill 2 by Senator Simitian, an act relating to energy and making an appropriation therefore.
Senator Simitian.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, you will recall in 2009, the Senate and Assembly sent a measure to Governor Schwarzenegger that called on the state to move to 33% renewable energy use by the year 2020. That bill was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger with a message that expressed concern about the definition of renewable energy that qualified under the 33% mandate that was proposed. The governor, to his credit, I thought, encouraged us to keep working, expressed his continued support for a 33% renewable portfolio standard. And so last year, in 2010, a renewed effort was taken up, and I thought we made very good progress. We set aside the problem definitions and provisions that had been of concern to the governor and others, came together around a approach that was much more broadly embraced, brought the bill through the process, and unfortunately just ran out of time here on the very last day of session as the clock struck midnight. That bill, the measure that we had in motion last year, is back today in the form of SB 2. It is substantially the same as the measure that we had on the floor the last day of session. The arguments remain the same, members. This is a measure that can help us right now with clean air, help us right now address climate change, help us right now put in place a more sensible energy policy that protects us against the kind of rate spikes we've seen when we did not have a more diverse portfolio. Right now, we can take a step towards an American foreign policy based on American foreign policy values and interests rather than America's energy needs. And right now, we can begin again to create the jobs that this state so desperately needs. It is a clean air, climate change, energy policy foreign policy and jobs winner all around, members. And I want to emphasize that the jobs that we're talking about are not jobs that are located in just one part of the state. These are jobs that are certainly available in the Silicon Valley area that I represent, where folks are on the cutting edge of the technology, but that's happening in urban centers up and down the state, San Diego, San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles certainly. Also happening in the rural areas where so many of our rural counties are desperately struggling in this economy. We're talking about things like Imperial geothermal, Madam President, Tehachapi wind, the high desert sun, the Central Valley biomass. All of that can keep growing, but only if we send a signal to the marketplace that says California is real and serious about 33% by 2020. If we do that, the market will respond, and the investment dollars, the jobs, and the tax revenues will come to California. If we do not send that signal, the investment dollars, the taxes, and the jobs will go to some other state or some other nation. The choice is ours today, and I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Simitian. Discussion, members. Senator Blakesley.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I worked with the author some years ago on SB 107. I can't remember how long ago that was, Joe. Seems like forever. To establish the current 20% renewable portfolio standard as a co-author, and was proud to support that measure, and have been working for these many years since then on the next phase that would move the state forward. But I have some concerns about this bill, and I'd like to ask a question of the author, if I may, Madam President Pro Tem.
You may. Question of the author.
We established high goals that were very challenging for many to meet by 2010, and many did not meet those goals, but some have. There are some energy service providers and some publicly owned utilities who, at some great investment and cost to their ratepayers, complied with and met the goals of that bill. And I'm hearing very significant concerns from many of those individuals that they are not being credited with any of that hard work and cost to their ratepayers, whereas the IOUs and others who did not meet that goal are essentially simply being given a new goal. I understand from those who have spoken to me that you've made some representations that you would address their issues, problems, concerns, but you didn't have time at this juncture because you're moving this bill forward to get to the governor's desk as quickly as possible. My question to you is, will you commit to address this issue with the ESPs, the POUs, to ensure that those who worked hardest to comply with the law are not penalized for having done so?
Senator, I can commit to continuing the conversation, but I can't commit to an as yet undefined response in statute. I think there's been some either misunderstanding or misrepresentation about what the bill does and doesn't allow without regard to whether you're a publicly owned utility or a investor-owned utility or an ESP. The bill, members, allows banking of long-term contracts going forward. Some folks say, well, we don't like long-term contracts. Fair enough. The bill allows the use of short-term contracts to credit towards the required goal. In fact, if you needed to get to, say, 25%, you could easily have 24% of your renewable energy come from nothing but short-term contracts, have a long-term contract that provided another 2 or 3%, and that 2 or 3% would then be bankable. So I want to be very clear, there's nothing that says you can't use short-term contracts. You can. And there's nothing that says you can't bank long-term contracts. You can. And there's nothing that says you have to have your portfolio made up largely, or certainly not exclusively, of long-term contracts. But the question here is, how do we incentivize the continued growth and development of renewable energy in California, which is the job creator that so many of us are concerned about? And the answer is that if we're going to let folks have the benefit of falling short in 1 year, but using banked credits from another time, that benefit ought to be tied to a benefit for the state, which is the further development of renewable energy. That requires longer-term contracts for the investment potential that is necessary to build those facilities.
Without engaging a soliloquy, may I clarify my question?
Briefly, Senator Blakesley,
Thank you.
and then Senator Simitian, if you could take up the rest of this matter on your close, that would be good. There's several more speakers. Senator Blakesley.
I appreciate the author's answer. I think it was 2-point to the issue of moving forward. I appreciate the author's comments on providing flexibility as we move forward toward the 2020 goal. My question was more specific to the 2010 goal and those who have been early adopters. How will they be handled? Will we have equity? The author suggested conversation. I've got a bill which I'd be happy to work with the author to facilitate that conversation, and would ask if the author would be willing to work with me on this issue.
Brief response from Senator Simitian.
Just to clarify on that last point. Members, the question here is not whether you can bank or credit. The question is whether after you were running in the first race to get to 20%, and then you start a second race to get from 20 to 33%, should you be getting credit from your first race when we've just started a second race? So that is the fundamental question on which there is still some difference of opinion and debate.
Thank you, Senator Simitian, and we will go on to Senator Liu.
Thank you, Madam President. I think this is a continuation of Senator Blakesley's concern, Senator Simitian and fellow members, but I rise to support SB 1, and I do so because I do represent 3 municipals, Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, who have opposed this measure and related measures in past years. And these munis want and are working toward the 2020 goal of 33%, but they are concerned about the first compliance period of meeting the 20%. But my understanding is that they have shared their concerns with your office and that you are continuing discussions with them. And as I'm concerned, it's good enough for me to today support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Liu. Senator Correa.
Thank you. Quick question to the author. Are the California Municipal Utility Association still in opposition to your bill?
I believe they are in an oppose unless amended stance. Straight oppose? Straight oppose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Correa. Senator Wright, and I'm calling on you in the order that your microphones came up. Senator Wright.
Madam President, members, I rise today, unfortunately, to oppose SB 2X. And it's not that I don't like the author, as some might imply, nor is it that I have a problem with renewable energy. I want to remind people that the first renewable bill drafted in California, I wrote it and was the principal co-author and presented that bill on the floor. But that bill protected consumers and it protected rates. And we were able to get a supermajority on that bill, and I'm proud of that. I clearly have more concerns with SB 2X today than I can fully articulate on the floor, but I want my concerns on the record so that when this comes back as the energy crisis part 2, there'll at least be the note that said somebody raised the red flag before the train wreck. One of my favorite movies as a child was Porgy and Bess. And my favorite character was Sammy Davis Jr., who was playing a guy called Sportin' Life. And the song that he used to sing that I thought was so telling for this period now is, "It ain't necessarily so. The things that you liable to read in the Bible, it ain't necessarily so." Members, last week in the Budget Committee, we were making severe cuts to services. We reduced glasses, hearing aids. By God, we even reduced incontinence products and adult day health care. Like you, I've been inundated with people calling my office about the calls. So today, we're about to vote on a bill that will raise their electric rates 15 to 20%. But let me add another thing that's often not taken into account. We're also looking at increasing the cost of electricity in the state in total to meet this 33%, $15 billion. Businesses pay taxes on the net, so you can also subtract an additional $1.5 billion from the general fund as this passes. The objective of SB 2X is not clear. 33% by 2020 is a great slogan, But what are we trying to achieve? In 2002, we were concerned about the volatility of natural gas. So we passed the bill to deal with fuel diversity. But what we have since learned is that the introduction of intermittent non-dispatchable resources doesn't lead to a reduction in gas. We found that the consumption of gas actually went the other way because you're using the resources less efficiently. Then the slogan was changed and we went to, oh my God, we've got climate change. And we've got to lower our carbon footprint. Well, the same issue that gives you diversity issues is also true with climate change, because you have to use more gas because you're using the base load facilities inefficiently. And as we've seen with our 2020 goal, as we've reached that, the gas consumption has gone the other way. So that means that we have not benefited the environment as we've set out to try to do in this bill. Base load power plants running more efficiently, coupled with a wise use of renewables, would be a much better way, but the bill doesn't integrate the system. It only speaks to what you buy. That's not a good way to do that. But let me make another point. The bill doesn't even require that there's a measure of whether or not you had any carbon reduction. That's not in the bill. So you could fully comply with the bill and actually increase your carbon footprint, as has been done by several municipal utilities. The current slogan is relating it to jobs. The Division of Ratepayer Advocates, who, by the way, support the bill, distributed a report dated February 11th, and on page 8, they say that the current market for above-market costs for renewables is $6 billion, and that's to get to about 15%. Let me say that again. It's $6 billion at about 15% above market charges. That translates into about $200 million, again, to the general fund. At this rate, to get to the 33% members, we're talking about roughly $15 billion out of the general fund. Now, how many jobs did we take away for $15 billion? California currently has some of the highest industrial rates in the country. The California Manufacturers and Technology Association stated that our industrial and commercial costs are 18 to 20% above the national average. Safeway stores, the second largest employer in the state of California, they came into the committee and opposed the bill. They raised the same thing that Senator Blakeslee raised. They were a good corporate citizen. They lowered their corporate footprint. They lowered their emissions. They created their own kinds of renewables. They were working with ESPs. The bill actually penalizes them for being good corporate citizens. So Safeway has already begun to move jobs out of California in response to the fact that the energy costs are going up. So with the $15 billion that's going to go for above market charges, there's another point that you have to remember about electricity. The electricity platform employs people, but the purpose of it is not to create jobs. The electricity platform is designed to provide the platform so that others can use it to create jobs. We've got it twisted. You don't hire people in the electricity system to build jobs. You use that as the platform to create jobs. We got it backwards, and we've got to get ourselves straight. I have another issue, and I'm going to hurry up and get this done, but 2X calls on the CPUC to balance the costs. The same report from the Division of Ratepayer Advocates noted, I want to quote here, the CPUC has approved nearly every renewable contract filed by utilities, even when they rate poorly on least cost best fit criteria. This bill gives the CPUC a blank check to approve with no statutory guidance and their abysmal record thus far.
Members, can Senator Wright have your attention? Thank you.
And with their abysmal record thus far, I'd say that that's a bad idea. Members, my point, and I'm wrapping up, is where I started. In California, we slant the cost of electricity toward the business customer. We protect the residential customer. Businesses pay income tax on the net. Individuals pay on the gross. The total annual electricity bill for California in 2009 was $33.71 billion. This bill could add another $15 billion in overmarket charges to that cost. Because the bill eliminates the market price reference, vendors will have no reason to mitigate their costs because they know that the PUC is going to approve all the costs anyway. Whether inadvertent or on purpose, I'm not sure, this bill creates what you call in economics a seller's market. So this is going to be some expensive power. So you can subtract $15 billion, or about 1.5, from our general fund. You can deduct that from our taxable income. Is this really worth $1.5 billion in general fund money? Another way of looking at it is that adult day health care, or the incontinence products, or the other things that we were talking about for the elderly. That's your choice today. Members, in my view, this bill should be re-referred to the Energy Committee, and it should be fully cooked. But around here, there never seems to be enough time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over. Do-overs are very expensive. So I would say to my friend and colleague from Palo Alto, it ain't necessarily so, and I'd ask for your no vote on SB 2X.
Thank you, Senator Wright. Senator Pavley.
Yes, thank you very much. I first wanted to acknowledge the hard work of Senator Simitian on this issue. I've been following it off and on for a couple of years now, and what several years ago was not only a very complex bill, but had a lot of people questioning certain parts of it. He has done an amazing job in addressing almost all of the concerns. Is there work yet to be done? Of course. He's the right person to accomplish that as well as it moves through the process. You know, some of us were fortunate enough to be in the legislature back in 2001. I know I was in the class with Senator Simitian and Gloria Negrete-McLeod and Senator Lieu and others. That's the period of deregulation where we had the brownouts. We came in as freshmen in January of 2001. The energy crisis has hit. And part of the problem, frankly, is we were so over-reliant on natural gas, and out-of-state companies could game the system. We had to buy long-term contracts at high prices. We learned from that. Diversifying the fuels, the energy supply is absolutely critical to our economic stability here in this state. Investing in renewables makes economic sense to moving our state forward. Not only does it create stability and reduce the potential for volatility on the energy supply, it is creating those new, I hate to say green jobs for some reason, but those new jobs of the future. You know, when I attended the hearings just a couple of weeks ago that Senator Padilla held, it was an informational hearing on renewable energy, I was struck by the fact of how many supporters there were of this particular legislation for a variety of reasons. One, they were very strong in their message of it is critically important to put this bill into statute. We had it in an executive order. It's part of CARB's approach in dealing with the scoping plan under AB 32, but putting it into statute is critically important by sending that price signal that Senator Simitian referred to investors in these new alternative energy facilities. We are seeing the merits of doing that. Explosion of interest in permits for solar energy and wind energy and geothermal energy. And if you haven't looked at the difference in prices recently on photovoltaics, it is getting very comparable to natural gas. This is a smart bill. I commend Senator Simitian for his hard work on this effort, and I proudly support this and urge passage of this.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Senator Padilla, followed by Senator Fuller.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I rise to support this measure as well, and wanted to give just a little bit of context for what has transpired through committee, not only in the last few weeks, but over the last few years, as discussion debate on this topic has evolved. And also to point out that while I don't think this is necessarily the final, it's pretty close to final as I think we will see in this special session. And I call out something that I've talked to the author about, a tweak I would like to see as it pertains to municipal utilities and sort of their reporting requirements and consequences for noncompliance that I don't think unravels what is a pretty comprehensive bill, and what I don't think unravels a unprecedented coalition of support on the bill. But colleagues, this is not the first time we've discussed and debated setting a new standard for renewable energy usage by utilities in the state of California to the 33% level. In fact, Senator Simitian has been trying for a couple of years now. And if nothing else, one of the major observations I've made as chair of the committee is that there is very little disagreement on whether we should pursue a 33% RPS standard by the year 2020. Very few people will come to us and say, we think that's a bad idea. Where the disagreement and debate comes is in some of the details, and the details are important. What are the rules of the game that we're setting for renewable energy developers, for utilities, and others to have to follow to achieve a 33% standard as we define it? And what are the consequences for noncompliance, whether you fall just a little bit short or whether you fall significantly short? But I think it's important to recognize that there's a vast consensus on raising that bar to 33%. Now, I think some of you have heard me speak both on this floor, in committee, and in other audiences about the variety of points of view that people have as they approach this 33% conversation, or renewable energy in general. Some people do indeed come to us and say, we need to raise the bar when it comes to renewable energy use in California. It's a matter of national security. We need to wean ourselves off of foreign oil. And I agree, that's important. That's a significant consideration. Other people will come to us and say, first and foremost, it's all about greenhouse gas reductions. And we need to pursue renewable energy as a way to stop or reverse the impacts of climate change. I agree. That's an important and laudable goal as well. Other people will say, renewable energy is sort of the next big thing. This clean tech sector as a whole is going to be as profoundly impactful and beneficial to the California economy if we get this right as information technology and its revolution has proven to be, or the biotech sector has been for many regions of the state of California. So from a job creation standpoint, we ought to be pursuing this. And there's other reasons that people will articulate. And guess what? I agree with all of them. And our job as policymakers, the job that Senator Simitian tried to tackle, the job that we try to tackle through committees, try to balance all these interests and opportunities and fashion a bill that is, while not perfect in any one person's mind based on their motive or agenda, we think best from a comprehensive standpoint in achieving multiple goals. I got to say this. I love Rod Wright. I love Rod Wright. Very few of us are as articulate as he is, and most of us will never learn as much about the energy and utility world as he has probably forgotten. But I have to disagree with him on one notion. I think the arguments that I heard him say just a few minutes ago were overly focused on the connection between RPS and AB 32, specifically greenhouse gas reduction standards. I think it's something that we ought to be mindful of. But over the years, Senator Simitian has done a consistent, persistent, and effective job in articulating that that's not the only motivating factor for his bill. For the people who recall the energy crisis of not too long ago, a big part of that was driven by not being diverse enough in where our energy comes from, the fuel mix. And I think that's probably one of the more profound areas of this bill, forcing that diversity in that energy portfolio. Is it going to be more expensive? Yeah, probably, because of the state of where the technologies are today, solar, wind, others, etc. But guess what? We've made a decision and a choice as a legislature, as a state government, and as a state to wean ourselves off of coal. That is happening. That's not going to be reversed. We have made a decision as a legislature, as a government, and as a state to try to reduce our fossil fuel consumption. And while natural gas is much cleaner than coal and will, for a long, long time, be part of our energy mix, we can't count on that alone. and its costs will continue to spike. They've relatively stable in the last couple of years, but at some point in the near or midterm, those costs are going to go up. So it's not a matter of if energy costs in general are going to go up or not, because they'll go up whether it's renewables or not. The question is, as they grow up, can we try to moderate them and contain them as much as possible while achieving these other upsides to a renewable energy mix? I think we can. And again, while I think there's still a couple of tweaks, whether in this bill or accompanying bills, that can tighten it up, we've come a long way. The last thing I want to mention is this. Senate Energy Committee held an informational hearing 2 weeks prior to consideration of this bill, where we heard from the PUC, from utilities and others about what the experience has been to date on renewable energy and achieving the 20% standard. Some people are using some utilities falling just short of the 20% mandate by 2010 as a reason to not want to do more. Where in fact, I think what I've heard from people on both sides of the aisle is the conversation and what we've learned on getting to 20% has helped set the stage in a much better informed way on the 33% conversation. A lot of the boogeymen that people feared would happen in achieving 20% didn't come to pass, whether it was impact on commerce clauses, in-state, out-of-state generation and delivery to California or anything else. The costs going out of control. Again, costs, yes, have gone up, but it's an investment we're choosing to make as a state. And I think that hearing went a long way in setting the stage for consideration of this bill. And I'm glad to stand as a supporter today. Look forward to those tweaks probably in the Assembly side and for this bill coming back either for concurrence or going to the governor in very short order. And I'd ask for your aye vote today as well.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator Fuller, followed by Senator Huff, Senator Renner, Senator Gaines.
I have a question for the author, but first I'll have a comment. My comment is that I really want to commend the author because we need jobs. And my area will really benefit from jobs. And so I've spent quite a long time because it comes to me that, guess what? We are going to need more energy of all kinds, no matter what we do. That is an inescapable fact, and I concur with the others. But where I'm stuck, and I'm trying to get unstuck, so I'm going to ask you some more questions. And thank you. You've been so generous in your time working with me, Senator. Don't you think that some of the people who were the early adopters that were good performers in the first round, don't you think that they would be some of the best performers in the second round, especially if their early efforts were recognized? That's one, and I have a second question after that.
Madam President.
Excuse me, Senator Fuller, why don't you answer both? I think Senator Simitian can answer both at the same time.
Okay.
Ask both, please.
The second question is going to be, and depending on his first answer, you may dissuade me, but my second question would be that it seems to me that we're very concerned also about pricing and wanting to have more clarity and less ambiguity around the pricing issue and the possible pricing spikes, especially now that everything else is changing in the energy world. And so I'm hearing that there's a need for some amendments. I can't believe that the Assembly won't ask for some amendments. And so my second question is a little bit predicated on the first, but so are you going to take amendments here or in the Assembly? And especially in these areas of pricing and the original credits.
Thank you, Senator Fuller. Senator Simitian.
Thank you, Madam President. In response to the first question, let me go back to the issue that we discussed a little bit earlier, which is important to understand people got credit who were early adopters, and they got the opportunity to bank their credit, to have that extra credit during the time they were early adopters in the first race, which is to get to 20% by 2010. Going forward, the bill is actually quite flexible about allowing pre-existing contracts to count even if they aren't quite the kind of contracts we'd like in terms of the content of the energy. Going forward, the bill still allows those contracts to be used. The bill still allows people to over-comply, if you will, and the bill still allows people to bank their over-compliance going forward. So both in the first round and in the second round, we have teed up this issue in a way that I think is consistent with what folks here are asking for and have been concerned about. Where the point keeps getting pressed by particular folks who want the bill to work to their particular advantage, and I understand that, that's the nature of interest group bargaining in politics, is folks who say, we not only wanted to get credit the first time, we want to take that extra credit from the first race to 20% and then be able to use it to comply to the next race to 33%. And what that means, if we allow that, is that they will then not be in compliance with the goals we established for the second race, and they will have an incentive not to get to compliance in that second race because they'll want to use their leftover credits from the first time around. That's the dilemma we face, which is that it is, rather than an incentive going forward, a disincentive to get to that better place. Now, I think the second question had to do with cost, if I understand it, and I'm glad for the opportunity to speak to that issue. Let me make a couple of observations. There are two groups that I want to reference who've staked out a position on the bill. The Utility Rate Network, which is the statewide consumer advocate who has supported the bill. But perhaps more significantly, given the debate and the comments from my colleague Senator Wright, let's go back to those folks at the Division of Ratepayer Advocates whose work he referenced. They are in support of the bill, and I want to just read very briefly from their letter of February the 11th. Members, if I could ask for your attention on this issue of costs. The Division of Ratepayer Advocates is the independent consumer advocacy division of the California Public Utilities Commission. DRA's statutory mandate is to obtain the lowest possible rate for utility service consistent with reliable and service levels. DRA supports your SB 2. DRA strongly supports the ratepayer protections in this bill, which would limit program costs by establishing a limitation that prevents disproportionate rate impacts, adhering to the least cost and best fit approach, and by requiring sufficient transparency and reporting. That is from the entity that is specifically charged with being a ratepayer advocate at the PUC. The committee analysis in the Energy Committee that was referenced by Senator Padilla points out at the top of page 2, this bill requires the PUC to adopt a process for the rank order and selection of RPS projects for the least cost and best fit, which takes into account the indirect costs of transmission and the firming and shaping of intermittent resources, the cost of resources, and the viability of projects for the IOUs. The CPUC is also required to adopt a limitation on the cost for procurement expenditures to prevent disproportionate rate impacts based on certain factors. If an IOU hits the cost limitations, the IOU can suspend procurement unless procurement can proceed without exceeding a de minimis increase in rates. In short, in response to your question, Senator Fuller, this bill provides ratepayer protections which are not in current law. It adds to the protection that is there for ratepayers, which is why both TURN and the Division of Ratepayer Advocates has supported the bill. This is a step forward on ratepayer protection for those who have expressed concern. And then just a little common sense and market economics. Anyone want to ask where the cost of fossil fuels has been going up? It has, because there's less and less of it, more and more demand. Anybody want to ask whether the cost of renewable energy has been going down? It has, and we have seen that just within the past decade. Anybody want to ask whether worrying about a little bit of money at the immediate term is a wise long-term strategy rather than diversifying our portfolio? You don't have to look all the way back to the year 2001 when we sat here paying tens of billions of dollars because people tried to save a penny or two on the short run. You only have to look to the events in the Middle East in the last month and ask yourself, is that the kind of volatility you want driving energy costs for California and America? I think the cost protection provisions that the Division of Ratepayer Advocates highlights make the bill a substantial improvement over current law. As to the issue of where we go from here, as you heard from Senator Padilla, there is still some discussion with our Assembly colleagues. Not clear whether additional amendments would be taken in this bill or in another vehicle, but certainly the conversation continues. My door remains open to all comers, as it has been throughout this process.
Thank you, Senator Simitian. Thank you, Senator Fuller. Senator Huff.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. I did have a question of the author, but I think I'll pass on that right now. We're at a historic time where we are struggling once again to figure out on our budget how we proceed and get out of this hole. So we've split into basically two groups, those who believe that we should raise taxes to get through this, and those who believe we should strongly hold the line against taxes. I hope that those that are holding the line against taxes will review this vote with the same scrutiny and vigor with which they're holding the line on taxes. Because make no mistake, this, according to the CPUC, will be increasing costs to all ratepayers by $1.8 billion. And they won't be getting anything different for it. When they plug in their iron or they run their dishwasher, it's still going to run, but it's going to be being generated from something else, and it's going to cost them more to do it. The state itself is not indemnified against these costs. It's estimated that our own costs will be $279 million higher. So those of us on the Budget Committee, we're wrangling over items a lot lesser than that. Here's an opportunity for you to keep the state's costs $279 million lower. And it doesn't just stop with us. You got county, you got city, you got our universities, we got our schools. They all use electricity. So you're going to jack up their rates, and then you're going to howl at us to raise taxes. This is driving up the cost of electricity at the worst possible moment. The best case scenario is estimated a 7% premium increase for electricity. On the other hand, 2009 Division of Ratepayer Advocates says a 33% renewable portfolio mandate would lead to a 30% hike in electricity rates by 2020. Is that what you're advocating here today? You want our prices to go higher? It's also said that the rapid renewable portfolio mandate will create such a demand, it will become a seller's market. There's a lot of buzzing going on, Madam Pro Tem.
Senators, can Senator Huff please have your attention? And if staff is waiting for other items to come up, maybe we can have conversations out of the chambers. Senator Huff.
This rapid increase in standards will lead to, it will actually invite an Enron-style market. Is that what we want to take this back to? We wring our hands in here pretty regularly about the situations about why manufacturing is fleeing the state as if we have nothing to do with it. This is yet another nail in the coffin of our manufacturing sector in the state of California. The general cost of doing business in California, the manufacturing, is already 24% higher than the national average. California Manufacturers Technology Association says California pays 45% more than the Western regional states average. And yet, if we do this, we drive that cost yet higher. Globally, even if you are a greenhouse gas lover or hater, you know what I mean, you're not going to make an incremental difference with India and China and other developing nations coming online. And yet, our ratepayers will be shouldering that burden. Senator Simitian talked about the cost of fossil fuel going up. Fine. Let the market dictate. If this is the technology of the future, it will stand on its own just as cars replaced horses and airplanes replaced cars for getting around. The marketplace works, but when we artificially manipulate it here, we pay for it. Our taxpayers pay for it. Our businesses pay for it. Now, the businesses will pass it on. But that's, if they're here, we get their jobs. If they go to Arizona or Nevada, where there's cheaper, or Utah, where there's cheaper energy, still got the same greenhouse gases, but we don't have the jobs, and you all will be wringing your hands about, oh my gosh, we got to go out and raise our taxes yet again. Let the market decide. And in fact, there's a lot of talk about putting things on the ballot. Put this on the ballot. Let the people decide. Let them ask to have their taxes raised, their electricity rates go up. You know, I know we all like to feel good about the legislature we're doing. Even if you like this, this is the wrong time. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Huff. Senator Runner.
Thank you, Madam President. A majority of my district actually gets 350 days of sunshine every year and lots of wind, unfortunately. The number one issue I think facing the state today is the unemployed. Once people get back to work, we will have the revenues that we need to provide the vital services here in the state of California. I have been talking, since it's my third or fourth day in the legislature, to my elected officials in my district who are definitely in the hunt and working with several solar and wind generating plants in the high desert. It's important to them, they feel, to have jobs that they can count on. In our high desert community, we have about 17% unemployment right now. The cities and the counties feel they will have millions of dollars in revenue because of these facilities that will and are being built. I do have a couple of questions for the author. Once again, if we don't set the regulations at the 33% mandate, which I do not support the mandate. I didn't before when I was in the legislature. I don't currently support that mandate. But if we don't set the mandate, is it currently law that by 2020 we have to have 33%?
Simitian.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Runner, I would say it's the worst of both worlds, because we have not one entity responsible for renewable energy. That would be the PUC pursuant to statute. But for someone like yourself who's, shall I say, unenthusiastic about the 33% requirement, now we've got another agency, the California Air Resources Board, acting pursuant to the governor's executive order. So if you're unenthusiastic about 33%, you might ask yourself, is it better to go forward with this bill, which puts cost protections in statute, or would folks prefer to continue to see duplicative administration by a California ARB being driven by greenhouse gas considerations exclusively with no cost protections whatsoever in statute to protect the consumer as we go forward?
Well, good. I think you answered my second question. Is CARB going to actually be the one setting these if the legislature does not? And that, to me, is not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Runner. And we'll go to Senator Gaines, followed by Senator Strickland, followed by Senator Rubio.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to this legislation. I've got some real concerns about what the cost impact are going to be for consumers on the long term. And when we talk about a very tough environment with high rates of unemployment, I'm concerned about those energy costs rising, and I don't think that's being addressed in the current legislation. I've got a town in my district, the town of Truckee, that changed its energy contract to one that was 100% renewable, and their energy costs doubled. And when Prop 23 is on the ballot, I don't think that was clearly articulated. I don't think the voters understand that their energy costs are going up dramatically as a result of the implementation of AB 32. I do believe that we need new technologies. I think we are in the process of disruptive technology when it comes to energy. I think that's good. I think that's what needs to happen in California. I support energy independence. I don't think the ultimate answer is solar or wind. It ought to be a much broader list of options for different technologies that should include nuclear, should also include hydro. There's a lot of new technology with micro hydro options, especially in my district with all the water that I've got in the 1st Senate district. We have huge opportunities for energy efficiency, and I'm kind of coming to a new realization that we need to focus more and more on energy efficiency here within the state. I had an opportunity to meet with a gentleman that showed me some return on investment for energy efficiency in commercial buildings that had a 3 to 9 month return on investment, saving hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars statewide just on energy efficiency within the state of California. So I want to continue to look at that and let the market work. We are driving so much from a regulatory standpoint and a legislative standpoint what is happening. And I think as we move forward with the legislation, we ought to be looking at all options on the table so that we can truly become energy independent. Thank you.
Senator Strickland.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I rise in support of this measure. As the author has mentioned, if this legislature does nothing, then what will happen is Governor Schwarzenegger put forward the goal of 33%. And if this legislature doesn't come out with some cost containments and us all being responsible, then what happens is Mary Nichols and the Air Resources Board that's unaccountable, that's proven to many businesses in my district that they don't represent the small business, the manufacturers, or the ratepayers across the state of California. So we can punt and leave it to an unaccountable board. And one of the other things that a lot of energy companies and businesses have talked to me about is predictability. Right now, they're really worried that the PUC will come up with some other regs, the Air Resources Board will come out with other regs, and they've actually been working in this process. I've been working in this process to come up with some predictability for the businesses across the state of California. So if you do nothing, you're going to leave it and punt it to the Air Resources Board. And that was dictated by Governor Schwarzenegger's executive order last session. Now, I believe that we need to transition California to more renewable energy efficient economy. I believe we need all energy. I think what we need to do is get every energy possible, because here's a situation where we're going to put people back to work. The #1 state in the nation in renewable energy is Texas. A lot of new jobs are in this renewable energy field, and it would be shameful if California once again allowed Texas to dominate us in jobs. #2, here's a way to be not sending money to a lot of foreign countries that don't like us, and so we become dependent. And when we put people back to work, we actually help solve that budget problem. Members, I support this bill. I encourage everybody to support this bill. It's not a perfect bill, but it at least gives predictability and transitions us to a more renewable energy efficient economy. And I don't believe in punting to an unaccountable board. I believe that the legislators who are elected need to step up and be responsible.
Thank you, Senator Strickland. Senator Rubio.
Thank you very much. I, too, rise in support, but I want to address a topic that has not been brought up this morning yet. Coming from local government and having to cite and permit many of the large wind and solar projects for this state, I can tell you that this legislature must do a better job in helping industry reach the 20% goal. Our track record in the race, Senator Simitian, has not been the best. And so today's vote is not just to set the goal, but it is also to establish the commitment that we are going to streamline permitting and the regulatory process to see to it that we can turn dirt on these important projects. Second, that we're going to do the heavy lifting as it pertains to the transmission. It's no good to build the renewable energy facilities if we cannot connect the energy to those who need it at their home. And I'll end on this last point. If we are not able to make the regulatory reform that is needed to build these projects, we will not be able to provide the jobs and the workforce that we took up with the bill just prior to this with the pro tem's changes to the education alignment. So I urge an aye vote, but I also urge a commitment to moving forward on the streamlining of regulations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. Senator Dutton.
Thank you, Madam President. And members, I guess my only concern is I don't think anybody has a big problem with obviously wanting a better planet, a better world, certainly a better California. The fact of the matter is, though, take a look at the goods that you purchase today. The bulk of them, I would suggest, probably come from China. China right now is leading the world on coal-fired power plants. Whatever little things that you think you're doing here in California right now, frankly, are going to be dwarfed about what's happening in China with regards to energy production. One of the big problems we have is, said we compare it to Texas. The problem is Texas has a different definition for renewable energy than we do. They have far more options in Texas than they do here in California. The fact of the matter is, you're going to see a substantial increase in the cost of doing business and living here in California. And this bill, while I say it might be a slight improvement of what's happening currently, it doesn't really solve the current problem. And I would suggest that you take a step back. Well, if you're going to fix it, let's fix it. Let's not make it worse And what I'm concerned about is I think that's exactly what's going to happen with this bill. If this bill is considered the fix-all to the problem, then frankly, you're sending a bad message out there for job creation. And at the end of the day, that's the only way we're going to get out of this nightmare we're in right now, is actually encouraging job growth. Not with companies that require government regulation and control in order for their business plan to be successful. They're going to have to be able to compete in the free market. That's going to be the best way to get it done. Unfortunately, I know Joe's very committed to this project. And, he's worked hard on it. I just don't think this is the solution. I think it's going to actually send the wrong message and cost us more jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dutton. Senator LaMalfa.
Thank you, Madam President. A couple of fun facts here. The situation with hydroelectric power in California is such that if the plant is smaller than 30 megawatts, it counts as renewable power. If it's larger than 30 megawatts, it's not renewable power, which is interesting. I don't know how the raindrop is supposed to distinguish if it's falling behind a small plant or a large plant, whether it should be a renewable raindrop or not. Nonetheless, that's the facts as it is in California, which has a great effect on my part of the state. Interestingly, also, years ago, the California Desert Protection Act was created in California to set aside 1.4 million acres of desert in the Mojave area for permanent protection. 2010 was created, or is the idea is being brought forth to create a national monument of nearly 1 million acres in the same area. So we have folks that are in opposition to hydropower, opposition to nuclear power. They're saying that we've got to have solar, we've got to have wind. Well, interestingly, there's a very large set of projects ready to be pushed forward in the Mojave area, 9 of them, I believe, that would supply solar power to approximately 2 million homes. So what's happening there? Environmental groups and others are blocking this clean solar power from being put into place, blocking 2 million homes worth of power, meeting either 20% or 33% renewable requirement. So I would have a question respectfully of the author here. When do you expect that these lawsuits would be settled so that the renewable portfolio can be pushed forward?
There's been ample discussion, Senator LaMalfa. With your consent, I'd like to ask Senator Simitian to address this on his close. You appear to be the last speaker at this point.
Okay, then I will look forward to that in the close and leave just one more fun fact, and that the Netherlands, the Dutch, have abandoned a renewable standard for their country and instead are moving towards more nuclear power for their country. So that's fascinating, too, that the Netherlands, known as the land of windmills, is pulling back because the renewable standards are not working for them. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam President.
Further discussion, members? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Senator Simitian, I'd ask you to close, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, for a very vigorous and extended discussion. I will not revisit points previously made. Madam President, however, I would like to do 2 things that are unusual, at least in my case. The first is to admit a mistake, and the second is to accept a defeat. I earlier said, when I was asked by Senator Correa what the position on the California Municipal Utilities Association was, Senator Correa, I incorrectly indicated that the group was in an opposed position. In fact, they are in a support if amended position, support if amended. So I wanted to share that with you. The defeat I want to just accept at this point is, after 2+ years, Madam President, I am prepared to admit that I will never get Senator Wright to be my principal co-author on this bill. And I am prepared to simply move forward, taking that little setback in stride as best I can. On the cost issue, members, I've provided, I think, the DRA, the Division of Ratepayer Advocates, really very compelling assessment of the cost protections that are in place. what we've got is a lot of folks throwing out numbers, and people are a little selective about the numbers they throw out. Some people threw out $1.8 billion, some people threw out $6 billion, some people threw out $15 billion, some people threw out 7%, some people threw out 30%. Let's just make it a little simpler. I have an apartment here in Sacramento. The folks at SMUD sent me a letter and said that I could have 50% renewable energy right now for $3 a month. That's today. That's real. That's the kind of cost progress we're making in terms of the cost of renewable energy, specifically because we have been pushing this down through a renewable portfolio standard. The comments that Senator Strickland and Senator Runner raised really put me in an interesting and unusual place in my close, Madam President, and I will close with this. If you believe, as I do, that 33% renewable portfolio standard is going to clean up the air, address climate change, give us a sounder energy policy, help us with our foreign policy, and create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in California, I would ask you to be an aye vote. If you're opposed to the 33% renewable portfolio standard and don't like the idea of the ARB implementing the standard based on greenhouse gases and with no cost containment measures, then I'd ask you to be an aye vote on the bill as well. I respectfully ask for an aye vote from all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Simitian. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alquist? Aye. Anderson? No. Berryhill? Blakesley? Calderon? Aye. Canella? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. De Leon? Aye. DeSaulnier? Aye. Dutton? No. Emerson? No. Evans? Aye. Fuller? Gaines? No. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hernandez? Aye. Huff? No. Kehoe?
Aye.
Aye. LaMalfa? No. Leno? Aye. Ted Lieu? Aye. Carol Lieu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Rubio? Aye. Runner? Simitian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Vargas? Aye. Walters? No. Wolk? Aye. Wright? No. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Blakesley, aye. Runner, aye.
Secretary will close the roll. The ayes are 26, the noes 11. The measure passes. Members, is there any further business to come before the Senate in the first extraordinary session? Seeing none, we'll recess the extraordinary session, return to regular session, and convene in regular session. We will return to motions and resolutions, and I will go to Senator Woke at Senator Steinberg's desk. Senator Woke.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to invite
Senator Woke, one moment, please. Sure. Members, we're going to come to order. Come to order, Senator Woke.
Thank you. Members, it is with a great honor that I present this resolution today to Mr. Maury Turner. I would like to invite Senator Hancock to join me and Senator Price, who is here, the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. He is a resident both of Oakland and West Sacramento. He is a California native and the first nationally syndicated African-American cartoonist. He served his country during World War II and as a member of the U.S. Army, where he drew comic strips for military newspapers. He was asked by the National Cartoonist Society to go to Vietnam, where he spent 27 days on the front lines and in hospitals drawing more than 3,000 caricatures of service people in the Vietnam War. It is his intention to portray a world without prejudice and a world which reflects diversity through his work as an artist, as a cartoonist, and a social activist. In 1965, he created the We Pals comic strip, and today it continues to reach nearly 25 million readers nationwide. In the 70s, his comic strip was turned into a Saturday morning television cartoon called Kid Power. He has also written several children's books and has earned numerous honors from the National Cartoonist Society, the Anti-Defamation League, and the California Public Education Hall of Fame. Our pro tem, Darrell Steinberg, has recently nominated him for the California Hall of Fame. So, Maury, for all of your extraordinary work as an artist, as a cartoonist, and as an activist, I want to present this to you on behalf of the Senate, the legislature. Thank you, and on behalf of my colleagues.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Mr. Turner, and thank you for your contributions to the state of California.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Senator
add
Hancock and then Senator Price.
That Oakland, in my district, had the honor of being the birthplace of Maury Turner. He graduated from Berkeley High School in my district and has given so much to the children and the students of the world, but really in California too. We have been in countless community centers with young people throwing ideas at him, and he would sit up and make a cartoon right away illustrating something that would give them some thoughts as they went through life. So, Maury, we pals are our kids. We love you. You have been an icon and a role model and set us on the right path. And thank you so much. And I'm just so pleased to honor you this month, this year, for your lifetime of achievement.
Senator Price.
Let me just also express our real gratitude. Although from Northern California, you certainly have been loved up and down this state and around the country and around the world. Certainly a source of inspiration for adults and children of all ages and all colors. And so we just appreciate you. We salute you and continue to provide us with the kind of inspiration that is so meaningful through your artistic expressions. Congratulations.
Well, I'm overwhelmed. I had some funny things to say, but I'm
Mr.
near
Turner,
tears
yeah.
now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other speakers, members? Thank you. Senator Steinberg.
Thank you. Members, if we could
members, will we come
take some order, because we do have one very
come to order and
important resolution left to do here today. As Maury Turner deserves to be a California Hall of Famer, we have a Hall of Famer in our own midst here today. And that wasn't even on my talking points here. And it's our own Nettie Sablehouse. All right. We had the chance several weeks ago to thank Nettie, but not really in the proper Senate way, because we can't do justice here in a short floor ceremony to Nettie's 38 years of public service that is not ending but continuing here today. And many of you don't know that Nettie started as a legislative aide to the late U.S. Senator Alan Cranston. She was a consultant to Assembly Majority Consultants. She was chief of staff to former Senator Barry Keene. She was a Senate floor manager for 8 years. She was the director of the Senate Fellows Program for 5 years. And of course, for the past 13 years, she has been the director of appointments for the Senate Rules Committee. In that role, she has had the responsibility for vetting virtually every agency secretary, every department head, and a host of board and commission members, close to 2,000 men and women. And I have to tell you, she could tell you specifics about each and every one of those 2,000 people, their strengths and their weaknesses. That's the kind of depth and intensity that she brought to this very, very important task. And anyone who knows Nettie or who was vetted by Nettie knows that you were going to be treated fairly, but you were never going to be rubber stamped. Under Nettie's leadership, the appointments process, which is a unique power, a confirmation process of the Senate, a unique power of the Senate, has been elevated to substantive policy discussions, to deep program analysis, and a clear adoption of performance measures. Talk about oversight. And we do a lot of good oversight here. Nobody elevated oversight more than Nettie Sablehouse through the Senate Rules Committee. So much more. She has been a counselor and a mentor to literally hundreds of young people, fellows, people starting out their careers. She has the respect of still 250 former Senate fellows who still call her director. She works with the Science and Technology Fellows and has adopted Health Professions High School here in Sacramento to facilitate numerous mentorship opportunities here at the Capitol. You know, you can go on, but there are some people here in the Senate who, and she'll deny this, but who become sort of legendary. Legendary by virtue not only of their years of service, but legendary by the impact that they leave, the ethic that they create, and the way they go about their business. And Nettie's just downstairs, but as a Senate, we want to thank you for being one of those legends who the young people working now, the people coming up, the people who think about a career in public service, whether you're elected or a member of a staff or an outside advocate, the way you go about your business is something for all of us to aspire to. We want to congratulate you with a small token, which is an official Senate resolution. Yes, we can still afford a resolution. For the first time, I never realized that your name was Antoinette Sablehouse. But there it is, Nettie. I'm not going to read it all. Your great career, continuing career speaks for itself. Thank you.
Does she want to speak, do you think? We'll go to Lowell Fox. Let me call on Senator Leno, and then if Ms. Sablehouse would like to address the Senate, without objection, we'll take her up.
Nettie is a fellow Milwaukeean. Let me say you make us proud. And I'm glad to know that we will all have a good friend in the new governor's office. Congratulations. We thank you.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President. Nettie, what can I say other than well-deserved, and thank you for the years that I served on Rules Committee. the first 2 years I was in the Senate, not just sort of learning the ropes and the logistical administrative stuff of the running of the House, but more importantly, the tremendous work you did prepping us for those confirmation hearings. For me, it became really the crash course on the state government and politics, like at a level that I could never even imagine, that not only prepped me for the confirmation hearings themselves, but for a lot of the policy that is debated and discussed in all the committees. So tremendously beneficial experience for me that you made possible. I'll forever be indebted to you, and don't be so shy, don't be so subtle about acknowledging that just as much as it is about policy, it's also about, you know, having one of the 5 hands or so on the political levers that make this State House run as well as it does. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and you'll always have a friend in me.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator De Leon, do you wish to speak on this item? At my desk, okay. Yes. Senator De Leon.
Thank you, Madam President. Nettie, I had a very short period, the opportunity to work with you, unlike our President Pro Tem, Mr. Steinberg, as well as State Senator Alex Padilla, who had the honor to work with you for years. I could tell for the very short period that we had an engagement on issues related to Rules Committee that indeed you are truly, as Mr. Steinberg articulated, a legend in the Senate. I've learned so much from you just being 2 months in the Senate. The questions, you're always there to answer all and any questions, and I just wish you the very best. You're a spectacular addition to Governor Brown's team downstairs, and I'm just very honored to have the opportunity to have worked with you, even though it was a short period of time. Trust me, I have learned so much from you. Our 2 colleagues who are with us back here today will have very big shoes to fill, you know, following you, but you're a tremendous mentor. My legislative director, Lisa Chin, was one of your mentees. You were her mentor in the Senate Fellowship, and I just want to thank you very much for everything that you've done. Thank you.
Senator Fuller.
It is with great pleasure that I'm able to speak to you today, Nettie. A woman after my own heart. Get in there, not too many words, say what you mean, get it done. I've seen more candidates coming through my office since I've been on Rules than I ever imagined I'd see in a short time. I'm really pleased to have someone who gets business done in this House. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fuller. Senator Alquist at Senator Corbett's desk.
Thank you. Nettie, I want to thank you so much for what you've done for so many years. I say that as a new member of Rules Committee, as a senator, as someone who had a friend go through the appointments process. You have always been really fair. And I think that's about the most important thing in any human being, having a sense of fairness. In Rules Committee, it's really the philosophy of the legislature and how we want to see government run. And you're just stellar. I mean, you've just been way out there in terms of leading that effort. And so I would call you an institution, but you may not want to be called an institution. But I will say that you will forever be known for what you have accomplished, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Alquist. Ms. Sabelhouse, would you care to address us?
Thank you very much, Senators, for a lovely welcome. I'm grateful to Senator Steinberg and to Greg Schmidt, who often doesn't get thanked. Both of them have been wonderful people to work for, and I thank them both for trusting me. I want to thank my staff, all the people behind here who never get thanked, who work incredible hours to assemble all the... I believe in public service, I believe in collaboration, and I think in the Rules Committee we've tried to be good examples of both. So thank you very much.
And members, please be aware there's a reception celebrating Nettie Sablehouse's departure immediately following session in room 211. Please join us there. Members, there's still some business to attend to today. The special consent calendar has 2 items, ACR 8 and 11. I will be requesting a unanimous roll call. Any objection? Then the secretary will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 8 and Assembly Concurrent Resolution 11.
Then without objection, we'll adopt those on a unanimous roll call. Thank you. And members, there are 2 adjournments in memory. Senator De Leon is first, followed by Senator Woke. Senator De Leon.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, members, I rise today to adjourn in the memory of someone very close to our office.
Senator De Leon, one moment, please. Members, Senator De Leon would like your attention.
Thank you again, Madam President. Again, colleagues, members, I rise to adjourn in the memory of someone very close to our office. Ferenc Frank Vedes, the father of our district director, Steve Veres. Just last week, Saturday at 2 a.m., Friday the 19th, Frank passed away in his sleep after battling Parkinson's disease. Frank lived a full life and was known to be an avid table tennis player. As a young father, he would take his 2 oldest children, Loretta and Stephen, to Chinatown to watch him play. He enjoyed spending weekends at MacArthur and Lafayette Park near downtown Los Angeles, where he often played games of chess. After his chess matches, he enjoyed a good cup of joe coffee at nearby Langer's Deli on Alvarado Street. He also became a seasoned bowler and spent lots of time at Gage Bowling in Huntington Park. Born in Budapest, Hungary, he was orphaned during World War II and grew up in several regions in Hungary, including Hungary's wine region. During his teens, he was educated and trained as a machinist in communist Hungary. Fleeing communism in Hungary, he immigrated to the United States in 1957 and settled in New York City as well as Buffalo, New York. There, he learned basic English by sneaking into movies for hours upon hours. This man truly lived the quintessential American dream. He settled in southeast Los Angeles, where he met a Mexican woman and fell in love with her. And this woman eventually became his wife, Margarita. They married on November 23, 1974, and raised their family in California Street in Huntington Park, Senator Ron Calderon's area. Frank pursued his love for machinery and was a machinist at the Los Angeles Sanitary Can Company for more than 40 years. Retiring in 2002, he was a proud and active member of the United Steel Workers Union Local 8957. He instilled a strong sense of public service on his children and was proud that they dedicated their careers to public service. Loretta, his oldest daughter, is a federal agent for the Department of Homeland Security. Stephen is a council member for the city of San Fernando, an employee of the California State Senate. And Priscilla is a public school teacher for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Above all, Frank will be remembered as a loving father, husband, son, and friend. He is survived by his wife, Margarita, from Jalisco, Mexico, his children, Loretta, Stephen, and Priscilla, and 3 grandchildren. 3 children who are very proud to be Hungarian, Mexican, and above all, American. This is truly the American dream. He has grandchildren, Jess Jr., Isabella, and Vincent Ferenc, and during the last weeks of his life, Frank was excited to know that his son, Stephen, my district director, and his wife, Cynthia, are expecting his next grandchild this upcoming August. He will be deeply missed. May our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator De Leon, and the Senate offers our condolences to the entire family. Please be sure the desk has the name. And now we'll go to Senator Woke for an adjournment in memory.
Thank you, Madam President. I am very sad to ask you to adjourn in the memory of Jose Ramirez Lopez, a 25-year-old constituent from Stockton who died on February 9th in a tragic car accident. Certainly, his passing happened all too soon, but he did touch the lives of many people. He leaves behind his mother, Maria Carmen Lopez, 3 sisters, and 3 brothers. He was a caring and loving person and will be truly missed by many family, many friends, and the community. Please join me in adjourning in his memory. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Woke. We do join you in adjourning in memory and offering our condolences to the family. Senator Steinberg, I believe that the desk is clear. There is one reminder from the desk. Members, please note that your Form 700s must be filed with the Secretary of the Senate by 5 p.m. next Tuesday. Please remember. Senator Steinberg.
Very good. Thank you, Madam President. Session will resume 2 o'clock on Monday, and I know Conference Committee is continuing today and tomorrow. And today and tomorrow, and we are proceeding apace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. The Senate will be in recess until 3:30, members, at which time the adjournment motion will be made, and we will reconvene at Monday at 2 p.m.